And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining today. Today is January 28th, so 2022. So in this week's episode, we'll be talking about some interesting that's been happening this past week or so. None more so than our first topic, which is, a lot of companies who's delving into the streaming services has been trying to make headway in trying to compete with the likes of Disney Plus as well as Netflix. Then we have here Apple, who's trying to diversify its portfolio by investing in other businesses such as streaming, and in order to gain attention or attract attention from their customers or viewers is to provide a new TV series, and they're trying to create a new series, a popular movie film of sorts, and translating to a TV series, which whether will that be a success or not, we have to wait and see. This is pertains to the Godzilla Monsterverse that's going to be showcased in their TV as a TV series. So we have to wait and see how that pans out. Next is relating to the streaming services. Netflix, even though they're the number one streaming services in the world, they're going to increase their price, which is, does this mean this is good or bad for the business? Obviously, if a company were to raise their product, whether it's marginal or a significant amount, there's going to be some concerns, and will this hurt their business as a whole? And what's the rationale for increasing the price? So we'll talk about that in a bit. Next is we'll be talking about how online businesses has benefited from the pandemic, obviously from people being staying indoors and ordering items online. And despite the benefits of ordering online, the downside is if you are to return said items, it causes a lot of waste. So we'll talk about that as well. Next, we'll also be talking in terms of investments. So in the finance aspects, a lot of people have been enamored with investing in blockchain technology, in particular cryptocurrency. And an interesting development is in terms of Bitcoin's valuation or value has dropped below $40,000, which is not a good news. So we'll talk about that as well. And lastly, something interesting, it's not necessarily business related, but in terms of how a country is going to lens in terms to entice their people to act a certain behavior. In this case, due to the decrease of their population, Seoul is willing to pay or subsidize subsidize the raising of kids by asking parents to have babies, and they're willing to pay I would say a pretty hefty sum, but it's an amount nonetheless, around $1,600. So roughly less than 100K here in the Philippines. So we'll talk about that. So to start off, so as mentioned, so according to AppleInsider.com, it mentions here that Apple, the company, or the Apple streaming services, is planning to create a what do you call this? A TV series to compete with the likes of Netflix as well as Disney Plus and Paramount TV, Peacock, and so forth. So a question here is, will it be a success with the likes of how Netflix, The Witcher is, The Mandalorian for Disney Plus, and so forth? Now, obviously, what Apple is betting is creating a monsterverse of sorts, so featuring not just Godzilla but other titans. So will it be an interesting story? Actually, it's an interesting one, but if you were to think about it, going back to the what do you call this, the original the films that they released last year, I think, Godzilla versus Kong. Anyway, the film primary focus, better focuses more on the monsters themselves rather than the people, because you know, with the exception of the first Godzilla film where it stars Matthew Broderick, I think. Is it Broderick? Can't remember. But anyway, the story of the humans as well as the Godzilla character, you know, makes sense. But with the latest reboot of they did, the character story arc doesn't make sense, or it's sort of weaker compared to the main monsters themselves. So let's take a closer look here. So Apple's TV has announced a series for brand new live action TV series focused on Godzilla and Titans based on the legendary MonsterVerse franchise. So obviously, if you're a fan for entertainment, you're always looking forward. But the question here is, will it do well on the adaptation, so to speak? And we've heard of, obviously you have the Star Wars, Mandalorians adapting for TV or streaming TV. It's doing really well. But on the other hand, you have Boba Fett. The idea is there, but the actual execution of creating a storytelling is not the same. So it's a hit or miss. And then you have the TV series for Netflix, Witcher, which is doing really well. It's very popular. They're on their second season. On the other hand, a live adaptation for the animated manga series of Cowboy Bebop, which to lukewarm response. So it's kind of hit or miss. The main question here is, will Apple be able to translate the success that it had on the big screen to the small screen here? And obviously, will it span how many episodes? Obviously, in a movie, you have roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours to create your story, and obviously in the TV series you have more time to develop the character arcs. But too long of a storytelling or too many episodes can sour the experience. And obviously you want to have a type packed storytelling that focuses on the main characters of the series or in the films. And obviously the main focus should be on the monster themselves, because the title of the film, or in this case the title of the TV series, should focus on that, and so forth. Anyway, so the story will take place after a battle between Godzilla and the Titans has leveled San Francisco. So question is, who will be the main characters? Now there's a lot of opportunity to explore which to name a character or a family or an individual and so forth, however they so choose, but hopefully not similar to how the films created the story arc for the human side there. Anyway, as mentioned, the yet untitled series will be produced by Legendary Television and was co-created by Chris Black, Star Trek Enterprise, Outcast, and Matt Fraction of Hawkeye, which are not to my taste, but either way. But the point here is, there's always an opportunity to create a spectacular TV series. And I think not just Apple, I think Amazon is planning to create their own TV series of Lord of the Rings. And then I think we discussed also in the past, they also plan to create a TV series for a game. What was the game again? Mass Effect. Yeah, there you go. And there's always great opportunity, but the question here is, will they be able to execute or trying to create a great storytelling? Because obviously, based on the narrative, some films, TV networks try to inculcate so many identity politics, being woke, so to speak, and it turns off a lot of audiences. And at the end of the day, if the audiences doesn't like the content that you're showing, people are going to tune you off, and you're not going to make a lot of headway. So we'll wait and see how the TV series is going to look like and how the reception will be from the audiences themselves. And next, sticking to network streaming services. So obviously Apple TV is trying to make a lot of headway, but in comparisons to the big giant, which is Netflix, who commands a little over 200 million subscribers. So meaning they invested a lot in creating content, procuring libraries from old films, which I've watched. I'm a subscriber. But according to the latest article here, TheVerge.com, It mentions why Netflix keeps cranking up its price. Now, obviously, increases its price can be somewhat sensitive depending on the product or services that you're offering here. So, why is Netflix increasing their price? So, let's take a closer look. So, here it mentions every year the cost of streaming gets more and more expensive. Now, why is that? Now, obviously, creating TV series or even films can be costly, and investing in a lot or new projects or content is important to gain that competitive advantage over your competitors with the likes of Disney and others. Now, the question is, why would it increase and how much is it going to increase? And it mentions here the most expensive plan is going to be around $20. Now, obviously, the plan that they have is around $15. So that's roughly about $5 increase, about 250 bucks, so to speak. But the question here is, will it yield a better content or better experience or even a worse experience? So who knows? And question is, why are they increasing their price now? Obviously, they have to spend their money, as mentioned here. One of their biggest reasons for the need for increase of price for the money is to pay for new shows and movies, which is kind of surprising and suspicious in a sense, because if I'm a consumer, you've spent hundreds of dollars in making a TV series. Obviously, some of them work, some of them flops, and obviously the responsibility should be on the creators of who allows those content to be developed. And obviously, not all TV series that pans out. And as mentioned, you have Cowboy Bebop, to name a few, only have one season. And then movies like Red Notice, even if they pay top dollar for actors like Ryan Reynolds, you also have Gal Gadot and The Rock himself. The star power is not enough if the story is that terrible. It doesn't make sense. And obviously, people are going to be turned off. Compare that to the films that Adam Sandler had a film that they produced in partner with Netflix. What was that? What was that? Let me check here. What was that film? Adam Sandler. I forgot. They were on a vacation. Adam Sandler. Yeah, so the murder mystery that did well. I mean, I also watched his other film, The Do Over, which was fine. So he's making a lot of money by partnering with Netflix to create several films, and whether obviously people are going to watch it, only time can tell. And obviously, Netflix taking advantage of the popularity of Mr. Sandler here, and with his core following, fans following, and showing that they would continue to watch his content here. And obviously, it also mentioned here that the services are spending a frankly outrageous chunk of change in original programming. And obviously, it makes sense for business to spend a lot of original content. Otherwise, you will get left behind. And obviously, at the heels at their behind them is Sony. It's Disney who's trying to be the market leader in streaming services. And obviously, spending in the right type of content, films or TV series, is critical. But just shelling out money just so you can produce a particular content that doesn't make sense for the current audience, it should be pursued, right? I think one of the reasons why I subscribe to Netflix is the first reason is with the content of the comedian Dave Chappelle. So his many series I watch online on YouTube, and got me thinking I want to see the whole bit that in his presentation. So that's the main reason that got me to subscribe to the to Netflix. And obviously they have a plethora of content there, old and new content. I tend to go for more older content because I've watched a lot of films as a younger kid, so I like to reminisce on those good films that that I got to enjoy. And obviously I'm always looking for new content to enjoy themselves. Now, increasing the price significantly, obviously up to a certain point, consumers or viewers will have a tipping point here. If Netflix keeps on increasing the price, then it might hurt their subscription base as a whole in the long run here. So here's to hoping they'll be more wiser in terms of the strategy, not just follow similar to how Disney is approaching it, spending, creating so many series left and right, trying to create spin-offs after spin-offs after spin-offs, which is, becoming saturated, that who wants to watch their content anyway in the first place. And obviously, with regards to, the Star Wars franchise, the MCU films that they want to bolster, obviously it has to be the right character for the right audience, and just shoving it to your face so that people would gladly accept it, could be a dangerous precedent here. Anyway, so question is, will you continue to subscribe to Netflix if they're going to increase their price? Now, obviously similar to another services verging on the gaming side, similar how Xbox Game Pass works, is obviously if you have a plethora of content, library of content for users or gamers to enjoy, I think they're willing to pay a premium price up to a certain point, because if you're paying, let's say, 20, 30, 40, or even $50, then why would I continue subscribing? Wouldn't I just buy a new game, or in this case buy the film, the DVD, or even the Blu-ray, so to speak, right? So at least I can have a physical copy of that content, so to speak. Anyway, shipping now to shipping. Segueing now to online services, in terms of how Amazon and Walmart are dealing with the repercussions of when consumers buy their products, and if it's not to their liking, that they have to return it. And if you think about it, if you have lots of customers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of consumers, that they have to return those items, whether for legal reasons, legitimate or illegitimate reasons, it creates a lot of waste. And I think we've discussed this in the past, wherein, what Amazon does, if there are a lot of return items, they just throw it as trash. So a lot of wastage is created, which is, can see how Jeff Bezos is advocating for environmentalism, being environmentally friendly, if their products are, creating a lot of waste. And obviously, this doesn't just affect the consumers, and there's always opportunity to create another business for those resellers. And obviously the sellers themselves don't want to shoulder the cost of getting the items back so that they can resell it again, so they're just thrown away as as waste, as mentioned. Anyway, so according to the article here at cnet.com, return online buys burns fuel and fill the dump. Here's what could change. So ordering from Amazon or Walmart, one of the biggest online retailers in the world, the benefit of ordering online is tremendous. You get to buy items conveniently, but obviously there are instances, especially if you're buying wearable items, clothes, shoes, and so forth. If it doesn't fit well, obviously if it's not ideal, you want to exchange it for the right size. Let's say if you're a medium, you ordered small, or if it's too small, you want to order a larger size, and so forth. So let's take a closer look here. So even though online shopping during the holidays has generated record sales for the companies, obviously it creates a lot of what do you call this? A flip side to those that or was it? Yes, returns that it creates. So even though it's considered a normal aspect of retail, of doing business, but obviously in online it creates a lot of backlog, and the logistics, and considering how the logistics supply chain logistics currently is being dealt a blow with access, with the rise of COVID cases, or with the Omicron cases, and so forth. So creates a lot of difficulty in transporting goods and services here. So during the online shopping has supercharged the process, because consumers often plan to return some of the goods that they buy. So that's particular for clothing, as mentioned here. So the mindset contributes to an estimated rate of return for online purchase that's as much as 5 times higher than for brick and mortar. So obviously the advantage of having a online business creates this scenario of if I can't be at the retail store and try out the clothes themselves, and if it's not to my liking or to exactly my fit, then I want to return it. And obviously, I don't want to shoulder that cost, and that cost will be passed on to the company themselves. Now, does it weigh the pros of selling more revenue online versus the cost of, of returns? Is it feasible, or is it a cost benefit? Does it outweigh the cost versus the benefit of it? So here an example, a company, Optoro, a company that manages return for online retailers. They mentioned here the retailers told that the National Retail Federation, they expect to see 158 billion of merchandise returned from online and in-person holiday, a 56% increase from the year before. So you can see it's a pretty significant dilemma that companies have to deal with, and obviously a lot of returns should be avoided or minimized, and find ways to mitigate that. Otherwise, it's a lot of wastage or loss of revenue that's being turned into waste here. I can also see here UPS expects to handle more than 60 million holiday returns this season alone. So that's pretty big if you think about it. So the issue here is the bottom line. Even though allowing returns can increase customer loyalty, which is a great service for your customers, the companies don't want the returns to eat up too much of their revenues, which is reasonable, so to speak. Right? So the question here is, if there are more online returns, there's more waste. So what are the solutions here? Now, obviously, if you're selling clothing items, so it makes sense to provide exact measurements of your shirts or clothing items, so people would know, so they can measure themselves in terms of, let's say, the length of the shirt, the width of the shirts, the sleeves, and so forth. So it can be easier for consumers. That's why I prefer to buy on the actual store, so I can fit it. So in this case, I'm wearing a Uniqlo shirt, so I know if I'm a small, medium, large, or an XL. So for future references, I can automatically easily say, or if I'm large size or XL, I could just buy it online. It's easier. But I have to do the trial and error myself, and obviously the cost of traveling and engaging, going to the store, which is can be risky, especially nowadays. It would be more beneficial if the information is provided online, so it makes it easier for consumers to make the necessary measurements, so to speak. Here it mentions here, Optoro estimates about 5 or 6 billion pounds of goods returned to all retailers in the United States end up in a landfill in a year. So imagine that the returns are not being recycled, so to speak, which I think that those companies has the responsibility to do that, rather just throw it out, right? So find ways to recycle those items and can create another segment of business for the companies here, which is it's a missed opportunity here. And obviously for Amazon and Walmart here, it makes sense for them because it saves a lot of cost. But imagine throwing a brand new iPhone because there's just a scratch, so they have to throw it away. So who do you blame here? The company that allows it to be thrown as waste, or the company themselves who sells the product through that platform, and knowing that if those products are returned, they will just be thrown as waste. So I mean, everyone's at fault here, should be responsible to a higher standard. And obviously a return ending up in the dump is an environmental worst case scenario. I think that's a given here. So obviously finding alternative ways to mail returns is important here, but obviously it's going to create more hassle for the consumers here. So it's a debate in terms of should I put in more effort, or there should be a better way for both business and consumers to benefit if there are fewer returns here in the long run here. Anyway, we'll see. Next, in terms of finance, so talking of finance here, so if you're into investments, one of the popular investments in the past few years or so, or decade or so, is that the blockchain technology has been even more popular now. But the question here is it a good time to invest, in particular cryptocurrencies, Doge coins, and Ethereum, and so forth? But in the latest article here at businessinsider.com, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin crashes 10% to a 6-month low below 38,000. Now, the 10% can be deceiving, because if you imagine how high the value of Bitcoin currencies were back then, you'd be surprised in terms of how much it dipped below. So cryptocurrencies follow tech stocks law. So if you were to look at the value of cryptocurrencies right now, so you can see here at google.com, so the value of a Bitcoin is less than $38,000, right? But if you were to move backwards, let's say a year before, you can see pretty significantly how much it has dipped in the past few months or so. If you look at as back as in late November, the price was less than 70k, a little over 66,000, and you can see here the trend is dipping, and it's only going to get worse. And the question is why? And a lot of people are scared of, in terms of the repercussions of the Fed that's trying to regulate, put higher tariffs on investing in cryptocurrency. And obviously one of the downsides of investing in cryptocurrencies is obviously the mining process, and it eats up a lot of resources, electricity in particular. That's why you have countries in China who has already banned it because of its inefficiencies. It can be lucrative for the individual who can mine effectively, and you need a lot of GPUs here, and which causes a lot of supply shortages in other aspects for GPUs. And if we were to look even further for the 5 years, you can see here what's interesting, that the price of Bitcoin here has only increased in the past year or so, way back in 2020 when the pandemic started, if you notice. So from October, and you can see the first increase was around January 2021, last year, to a high of 40, and then it increased to 56 by February, and then the high of 61 by March, and then it dipped, significantly by mid-June, and then it went higher again by August 2021, and then the all-time high of 64,000 by late November here. So you can notice here it's only increased this past year or so. So the question here is, will it be a good long-term investment for individuals who's trying to find alternative means to invest their hard-earned money here? And you have you have Elon Musk promoting or advocating investing in cryptocurrency. Obviously he's not investing his entire savings here, he's only splashing a bit here and a bit there, and I doubted that he would invest all of his nest egg into cryptocurrency here. Going back to the article itself, so question is, why is there a sudden decrease or significant dip of the value of Bitcoin? And not just in Bitcoin, but also you have Ethereum, which fell below $3,000 also. So a lot of the cryptocurrencies value have devalued or decreased significantly here. It was mentioned here. Where was it? Investors have been rapidly selling both cryptocurrencies and speculative technology stocks in anticipation of the Fed withdrawing its support for markets and the economy in 2022. So obviously it depends on the support from the community, the finance, the governments themselves, if they adopt it, and if they don't, then there are concerns here whether cryptocurrencies can be the next currency that people would adopt. So it was mentioned here, traders think that the central bank will raise rates 4 times this year, and an expectation that has rapidly pushed up bonds yield, meaning higher bonds yield have in turn made crypto and unprofitable tech companies look unattractive. So obviously increasing the tariffs for crypto, and obviously finding other investments more lucrative makes more sense. Then obviously investors will always quickly jump ship and look for the better investments in the long run here. So as you can see here, Bitcoin is getting pummeled, hit by another wave of risk aversion in the markets, according to Craig Erlam, senior market analyst at trading platform at Onada. So obviously, it's always a risk. If you're not into cryptocurrencies, you can invest in stocks or in bonds or in T-bills in the government. So there's always risks and rewards, and always you have to be aware on what you're investing, and make sure you're not investing your entire nest egg just thinking that the trends are going up here. And there's always other ways to invest, and obviously you have to do your own due diligence research in terms of which investment is the best for you, not just in the short run, but always look for it in the long run, because obviously many people are always looking for the quick turnaround, which is that's not the case here. And obviously, if you look at one of the best investors in the world, Mr. Warren Buffett, look at his portfolio, look at his years and decades of experience where it has yielded for him. And you can just imagine if everyone were to follow suit, obviously not to the same level, but obviously there are always opportunities for everyone to make investments and make a killing, whether in terms of 5 figures, 6 figures, or even more. So there's always opportunities for everyone. Anyway, for our last story here, let's see here. Yes, so what's interesting here, what a country would do, if one is in desperation to find ways to solve a problem. And in the case of in South Korea, in Seoul in particular, according to insiders.com, Seoul is trying to boost its dismal rate by offering over $1,600 in cash vouchers to parents of babies born in 2022. So it just goes to show you that is it easy enough for people to change their ways from dictating to the masses that you should control your birth rate, and now you want to change that policy. It's kind of difficult. Obviously, it's about human behavior at the end of the day, and obviously turning off a switch is not as easy as it looks. And obviously there are other means for solving this solution, which we'll talk about in a bit. And obviously, if you notice, there's a common pattern here for countries that have low birth rate. You have South Korea, you have China, you also have Singapore, and even in Japan. And all of them have a decrease of their population, obviously, as their population ages, meaning there are fewer younger generations who's supporting the economy here. And obviously, for whatever reasons, they are very apprehensive in terms of accepting migrants, because migrants is the best way to solve the decrease of your population. Obviously, if you bring in migrants that have kids as a family, so that would be an influx of new people in your country and your economy here. But that's not the case here. So let's take a closer look. So it mentions here that Seoul is rolling out new cash voucher scheme to subsidize the cost of having a child. Now, is $1,600 enough to subsidize the cost of children? Obviously, it's going to cost more to bring up a child. You have education, health, all of those things. If they're really serious in intent on encouraging families or parents to have kids, or more kids at that, then they need to do a drastic change in terms of how bring up a child. The cost of doing that the government will subsidize that. And I think that would work, aside from migrants moving to your country here. So they're giving $1,650, which is, I don't think that's enough. And what's concerning here is you can see here that the fertility rate is down to 0.84. Now, 0.84 is pretty substantial. So think about it. For every single birth, there's a single death. So that's 1:1. The fact that it's less than 1 tells you that over a long period of time, that's going to even decrease to the point that there's no one going to be left in their country. And that's the same for other aging populations in other countries as well. So they need to be drastic here. Now, Japan has been relying on technology rather than on migrants, which is, I don't think it's a long-term solution, because you still need people to manage those technologies in the long run. And I think the influx of foreigners or migrants would be the best way. That's why you notice how prosperous the United States are, and Canada is within terms of accepting migrants. Then also other countries such as New Zealand and Australia, I think. So I think, so if they want, they could always get more people here in our country. We're considered overpopulated, and we have a lot of couples, families with kids galores left and right. And if they were to be able to transpose them to their country, and obviously their country would benefit from it tremendously if they were to live there long term. Anyhow, anyway, going into detail again. So the Seoul Metropolitan Government is distributing a cash handout to parents with newborn in a bid to boost its dismal birth rate. I don't think that's going to work even in the short run or in the long run. I mean, if you're going to entice someone, might as well entice in a higher amount. So $2 million, 2 million South Korean won or 2 million won, is it a significant amount for you to be enticed? Just like in business, like when they're recruiting employees to work for the company, there's a sign up or bonus. If it's not substantial, then why would I, go to the process, getting pregnant, feeding the kid, the cost of, having a family and so forth. So it's not an easy thing. So there has to be commitment from both parents that they really want it. It's not just because the government wants it and so forth. Now, the incentive here is among several childbirth subsidies that the South Korean government has rolled out in recent months. But obviously, that's going to take a lot more than just convince people here. And as I mentioned, turning on of the concept of having limited kids or just to one child policy and so forth, it's not as easy as it looks. So the South Korean authorities lifted the previous restriction that prevented new parents from using vouchers to pay for medical expenses. Obviously, providing this incentive creates another whole lot of problems, and don't expect them to get the result that they desire. And as a matter of fact, that the simple reason is, if you want to increase the birth rate, then you shouldn't have stopped it in the first place, because obviously attitudes takes a long time to procure that, especially in our country here where it's family oriented, that they would, regardless of the situation, they would always encourage people or couples to have kids, more than one. And if you try to discourage that, and that's going to have a long-term ramification, and I don't know if they can just simply turn the tide, with just shelling out money here. And I think I'm big advocate of migrancy, or having migrants occupy those missing individuals or families that they need, so that they can procreate and repopulate the population. Now, obviously, it's going to be mixed, which I think those are the main concerns of those countries that doesn't want any foreigners mixing with their race. I could be wrong, but with Japan and Korea being homogeneous in terms of their population, so something to be aware of. So we'll see. Hopefully they'll be able to find a long-term solution, not just shelling out money for the short run here. Anyway, I think that's about it. If you have any questions about today's topics, I'll leave the link in the description below. As always, I'll see you next week, same time and same channel. Stay safe and take care.